everybody. Welcome to Comcast Newsmakers. I'm Robert Tranum. As always, thank you very much for joining us. With record government spending and soaring deficits, some in Washington are calling for a balanced budget amendment. My next guest is one of those champions, Congressman Dan Lungren, Republican from California. Congressman, it's good to see you.
Thank you very much.
You know, it seems like we as a country or as a society have been talking about balanced budget amendments for many, many years. I remember Ronald Reagan talking about it, George Bush talking about it, Bill Clinton talking about it. Here we are in 2010. Why don't we have one, A, and why do we need one?
Well, the reason we don't have one is because we have irresponsible spending going on here in Washington, D.C. I mean, we even have the situation this year where we're not even going to adopt a budget in the House of Representatives.
Why is that? I thought constitutionally you have to.
No, we don't have to constitutionally. We have a statute that's been in effect since 1974, which requires us to do so by the spring. This will be the first time since that law passed that the House has not passed a budget. Sometimes in the past, about 4 different times, the House and the Senate couldn't get together finally with the budget, but each of them had passed one. This is the first time the House hasn't.
But Congressman, let me stop you there, because I'm sure a lot of folks at home are scratching their heads and saying, wait a minute, we have to have a balanced budget at home. We have to obviously understand what's coming in and what's going out. Why can't the U.S. government do the same?
Oh, that's a question everybody ought to ask. The fact of the matter is we're not going to get anywhere close to a balanced budget. We're not going to get anywhere close to trying to drive down our deficit and our overall debt until and unless we face reality. One of the reasons we're not going to have a budget this year in the House is the majority has decided we'd be too embarrassed about it. If we're embarrassed about it, we ought to show that to the American people so that they can build the support for changes here in Washington, D.C. The fact of the matter is these things aren't inevitable. The fact that we have deficit after deficit isn't inevitable. The fact that we've got debt that we're putting on our children is not something that has to be. We can change these things. But the first step towards changing it is recognizing the difficulty we're in. And frankly, that has not taken place here in Washington, D.C.
No, Congressman, Democrats would say, wait a minute. You all passed a prescription drug benefit under Medicare. You didn't pay for it. You authorized 2 wars, Iraq and Afghanistan. We're obviously paying for that big time. We inherited a major deficit under the Bush administration. The last time they checked, they handed over a surplus to Republicans when Bill Clinton left office. What is your response?
Well, I mean, first of all, you've got to realize it was Republican Congress that had a balanced budget under Bill Clinton, forced many things upon him, but he actually did work with them on it. Secondly, looking back doesn't help you about going forward. The fact that somebody else did something bad doesn't mean that you have every excuse to do even worse now. And when I came back to Congress in 2004, I criticized my own party. I even had a meeting, remember, at the White House with the president. There were about 20 members there. And I said, Mr. President, the people back home want me to give you a message, which is you're spending too much. You haven't vetoed a single bill. You haven't really gotten the Congress to toe the mark. His response to me at that time, the president of my own party, was, well, Dan, I've threatened
You're talking about George Bush.
Yes, I've threatened to use a veto. I said, Mr. President, that's not good enough. So I don't think looking back and saying, hey, this president or this member of Congress didn't do right is going to help us. What we need to do is look forward. We have the responsibility now to do something. That responsibility imposes upon us an obligation to think about our children and our grandchildren. The idea that I've got a 4-month-old grandchild, when I hold her in my arms and I think about the future she's going to have, I should be required to think about the burden of debt that's going to be placed on her shoulders because when she's my age, before she can think about doing anything for herself, before the government that is in existence then can think about providing schools, providing national defense, providing police officers, they'll have to pay for the debt that we're putting on them now. And it is just unacceptable, it's irresponsible, and frankly, it is not the measure of the America that was handed to us by our parents and our forefathers.
Congressman, in the 30 seconds that we have left, the folks at home are probably looking at the television screen right now and saying, what can we do?
Oh, I'll tell you what you can do. As the president said, elections make differences. There are different consequences for different decisions. The fact of the matter is the American people have to speak out. And they have to speak out in November, and they have to say, we're concerned about budget. We require that of ourselves. We need that in Washington, D.C., and we need it now.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Comcast Newsmakers. I'm Robert Tranum. We'll see you next time.